So today we're going to finish up on biblical stewardship. We've been talking the last couple weeks on biblical stewardship, and we defined it this way. Biblical stewardship is the practice of managing God's gifts responsibly and using them to serve God's kingdom. Biblical stewardship is the practice of managing God's gifts, all the gifts, whether it's time, talent, or treasure, responsibly and using them to serve God's kingdom. We looked the first week and we made the declaration, God owns everything. It's all His anyways, it's not ours. We are stewards, not owners. And that it comes down to a matter of the heart. For where your treasures, that's where your heart's going to be. And then last week we looked at the stewardship from perspective that we are blessed to be a blessing. That when God blesses us, whether it's with our time or talent or our treasure, when God blesses us, it's so that we can bless others, right? Some of us can sing, and so we bless others with our talent. Some of us are shower singers. Anybody here a shower singer? Yeah, because when you get out of the shower, your voice just disappears. But in the shower, you sound great. But you bless others in other ways, because not all of us have talent. Not all of us have the treasure, not all of us, but we do what we can do. And so we learned the law of generosity, which is reaping and sowing. If you sow generously, you reap generously. If you sow sparingly, you reap sparingly. We also looked at the dangers of greed and hoarding, and then we looked at the principles of tithing and giving. And this is the only time in the Bible where God says, test me. And Malachi says, bring your tithes to the storehouse. This is your storehouse. This is where you get fed. This is New Life Lakeland is your home. This is your storehouse. Bring your tithes to the storehouse. And God says, and test me in this. And see if I won't open the windows of heaven and pour out such a blessing you won't be able to contain it. So listen, test God. If God says test me, you should test Him. In this, not in other ways. Some of us try to test His patience and we test Him in other ways, but this is the blessing. So today we're going to talk about faithful stewardship and eternal rewards. So we're going to reflect today on the essential aspect of our walk with Christ, and that is faithful stewardship. The Bible is very clear that God has entrusted each of us with time, talents, and treasures, and our responsibility is to manage them wisely, not for our glory, but for His. So we're going to look at some passages today, and these passages are going to call us to consider where our heart lies, how we use our resources, and what awaits us when we are faithful stewards of God's gifts. So let's begin this today by looking at Matthew 6, 19 to 21, and we start with where is your treasure? That's the question we can ask, where is your treasure? Because it all stems from this. So Matthew 6, 19 to 21 says, do not store, this is Jesus talking, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures where? In heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So Jesus here is warning us. He says, do not store up for yourself treasures in heaven. Some of us, the last couple weeks with the first hurricane that kind of glanced us, the second hurricane that just hit us, some of us realized that the treasures that we were storing up, right? And Jesus warns us against it. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth. Because earthly treasures will fade, they'll decay, they'll be lost. Earthly wealth is temporary. It is vulnerable, as we found out from Hurricane Milton, vulnerable to the forces of nature. Theft. How many of you, last night when you went to bed, locked your door? How many of you made sure your window's locked? How many of you got in bed, laying there comfortably, and said, did I lock the front door? And got up and went and checked the front door? Anybody? And you knew it was locked, but you had to do it. And then you go back to bed, and then Tiffany looks at you and says, did you lock the back door? I know I did, but now I got to get up and go make sure the back door's locked, because I don't know if I did. Right? You all with me on that? Why do we lock our doors at night? Keep us safe. Keep our homes safe. Keep our lives safe. Keep our valuables from being stolen. When does theft happen? When do the most break-ins in homes happen? At nighttime, when it's dark. We do those things. Theft. Earthly treasures get stolen all the time. And even the passage of time wears stuff out. See, Jesus here isn't saying that having money or having possessions, having nice things, he isn't saying that's inherently wrong. But what he is saying, he's calling us to check our hearts. Where is our trust? Where are we putting our trust? Are we clinging to what is fleeting, or are we focusing on what is eternal? Because Jesus ended that when he said, do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, because they're not going to last. And he ends that by saying, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. See, this means that our hearts are inextricably, I said that right, didn't I? Inextricably tied to what we value most. What we value most. Sometimes it's things. I'll tell you some of the things that when you get to be a papa, so those of you that are grandparents, you know this. Your grandchild can make the single ugliest thing. You know where I'm going with this? And they come to you and say, Papa, I made this for you. And you're like, I don't know what it is. I drew you a picture, Papa. You did. It's great. And I colored it. Oh, it's wonderful. But isn't that like you will never get rid of that? And if something happened, if somebody stole your car, all right, you're upset, you can get a new car. But man, if you lose that, you lost everything. You know what I'm saying? Jesus is saying, don't let the things of earth, don't be tied to the things of earth, because whatever where our heart is, it's tied to what we value the most. If we invest solely in material things, then our hearts will be chained to this world. But if we store up treasures in heaven through acts of love, generosity, and faithfulness, and we'll look at it a little more down the road here, our hearts will be fixed on God's eternal kingdom. So what we've been saying, we need to quit looking at money as something that we have and we're going to decide where we're giving it. That's not biblical. When we look at it, we say, what does God want me to do with what he's given me? It's a different way of thinking. It's changing our thinking, but it's fixing our heart and our eyes on what is eternal. Lay up for yourself treasures in heaven. Well, we can't lay up treasures in heaven. We can't take our pictures we love and say, here you go, Jesus, and take my new truck, and here you go, Jesus. You can't do that. So what does it mean? We're going to look at that here in a couple of minutes. So we trust God, not wealth. We trust God, not wealth. 1 Timothy 6, 17 and 19, he's talking about this, and he says to Timothy, who has been sent to this place to pastor these people, and he's a young man, and he says, command those who are rich. Now, I want to pause here for a second. There is never anything in the Bible that is opposed to people having money, to being wealthy. In fact, we read in Deuteronomy that God says, for it is God who gives you the ability to create wealth. That's not the problem, right? The problem is he's commanding the rich. He's not telling them, give away everything you have. You shouldn't be rich. You shouldn't be richer than anybody else. That's not what he's saying. But notice what he's saying. He's a command to the rich. So there are people that are going to have. And our responsibility, those of us who are not rich, is not to be jealous of what they have, but to pray for them that they will be faithful stewards of what God's given them. Thank you. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they, the rich people, will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Now, here's the thing. Most of us will pray and we'll say things like, God, if you would bless me and make me wealthy, I promise, right? You know where I'm going with this? I promise that I'll be generous. Right? I promise I'll be generous. I don't know. We think that it'd be great, but we know that lottery winners, right, the ones that win the big one, 7 years later, like 90% of them are broke. So we have to figure something out about that. Paul says, he gives us instruction here to those who are rich in this present world. He warns against the arrogance that comes in trusting in wealth because it's so uncertain. Temporary things are uncertain. We found that out with Hurricane Milton. We found that out all kind of stuff. Have you ever moved? We know someone that moved, and they hired a company, and then the company, parsed it out to another company. And when they moved and they got here, a bunch of their stuff had been taken off the truck, and there was nothing they could do about it. So all these things they had, this furniture and stuff like that, it's now gone. They don't know where it is. So if we put our trust in those things, it's going to fade. It's going to fail because it's uncertain. Things here are uncertain. Money can give us a false sense of security because it's fleeting and unreliable. None of you were alive in 1928, right? If you were, congratulations. You've made a long life. But in 1928, the stock market crashed. And people in New York City were jumping out of buildings. Why? Because they lost everything. But they didn't lose everything. They just lost money. Right? Because their perspective was, I've lost everything. Because their view of money was they were trusting in wealth. And now wealth was gone. I have nothing left to trust in, right? And we've seen this happen. It's fleeting. It's unreliable. Paul then says to command those to put their trust in God because God's the one who provides for our needs. Listen, you have a job, right? You work your job. Do that. And your job gives you a paycheck, hopefully, right? You get a paycheck. You take that paycheck home and you thank God for it and you give your tithes. Here's the truth. Your job is not where your provision comes from. God is your provision. The job you have, He's provided for you so that you can become a faithful steward with what He's given you. How many of you know most time at work, if you're at work, and you work and you do a good job and you're faithful and you work and you work, you're going to get a raise, you're going to get a promotion. Or if you are a boss, if you've ever been a boss, right, and it's time to promote somebody, who are you looking for? The ones who are faithful in the little things, right? That's the people you're looking for to promote. And that's the thing that Paul tells me here. Don't put your trust in things. Put your hope in God because God is Jehovah Jireh. God is our provider. Stop looking at your work as your provision. That's the place you go, do work. Be the best worker you can be. As a believer in Christ, you should be the best worker. You should be number one. You should be up for Employee of the Month every single month. Why? Because you're not working for that person. You're working for him. You're not working for that company. But to be a good example of who Jesus is, you be the best worker you can be for that company because they're going to notice you. And then when I think Jesus said this, let your good works shine before men so that they may see your good works and glorify your God in heaven. Be the best worker so when they see you, they're like, why are you such a good worker? It's because I work for Jesus. My boss is a carpenter. Paul says, be rich in good deeds. Having money is nice. It's great. You can pay your bills. And all of us have had seasons of our lives where we've lived paycheck to paycheck. And some of you might be in that situation right now. Let me tell you something. Seasons change. When you test God. In fact, some of you are in the situation you're in right now because God's trying to get you to be faithful in the little. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Be faithful. But test God, right? But whether we're rich or we're poor, we should be rich in good deeds. We should be generous. Listen, I know we gave $6,000, I think, to Convoy of Hope, $5,000, $6,000 Convoy of Hope. And I know some of us here lost a lot during Hurricane Milton and still gave to help other people. That's being generous. That's being blessed to be a blessing. When you've lost so much and yet you're giving so that other people can have. That's what he's talking about here. It's a call to stewardship, being faithful. It's a call for us to use what we've been given, not selfishly, but generously. And when we do this, Paul says, we store up a firm foundation for the coming age. Oh, remember Jesus said, store up for yourself treasures where? Heaven. When we do these kind of things, we're storing for ourselves up treasures in heaven. We take hold of the life that is truly life, eternal life in Jesus. We need to be faithful in small things. Faithful in small things. Luke 16. Jesus says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with very much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will be dishonest with much. Remember I told the story about, God, if you just make me rich, I promise I'll be generous with my money. God may grant that prayer. But he's not going to just do it because you ask him to. He's going to look first, are you faithful with the little? Are you faithful with the little? I remember when I first took a job as youth pastor, 23 years old. I knew everything. I knew everything about pastoring because I'd gone to Bible college. I knew what it took. And I couldn't wait for God to promote me, to lift me up, to make me, right? And the youth group starts growing, and we got a whole band. We had a piano player, we had a guitar, we had a trumpet, we had a saxophone. It was boom. We had 60, 70 kids, and I'm like, this is easy. And someone said to me, stop looking for God to promote you. You be faithful in the little. And when God sees you're faithful with the little, he'll bless you with much. Right? That's not what I wanted to hear, but it was good, solid advice. Faithful in the little things. If you've not been, it says here, if you've not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, how's he going to trust you with riches, true riches? If you've not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. Jesus said this, you cannot serve both God and money. See, Jesus here is reinforcing the importance of faithfulness and how we manage what has been entrusted to us. He emphasizes that how we handle very little reflects our trustworthiness in greater things. See, the implication here is that faithful stewardship in small matters prepares us for greater responsibility. I didn't realize that the first job I took as pastor, like we were revitalizing a church, and there was a lot of toilet cleaning and a lot of carpet pulling up and a lot of stuff like that didn't include sermon preparation and didn't have any Greek words to look up and research to give to the people. But God's interest was I doing the little things that he's asked me to do? So often we want the big picture. There are people that want to hold the microphone. And I'll say this to young pastors whenever I get a chance to meet with young pastors. Talk to them, they can't wait to preach the sermon. I said, yeah, but you got to clean the toilets. You got to mop the floor. You got to work in the nursery. You got to change some diapers. Why? Because it's faithful in the little. See, you can't serve two masters. Can't do it. If money becomes your master, it will draw us away from God. But if we serve God first, then our relationship with wealth falls into its proper place. What's the proper place for wealth? A tool to be used for his purposes. That's all wealth is. It's a tool to be used for his purposes. And here's the last thing. The eternal reward of faithful stewardship. Faithful stewardship has eternal consequences. Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, but lay up for yourself treasures in heaven. When we handle God's blessings wisely, whether financially or spiritual gifts, opportunities, time, talent, treasure, when we handle those things wisely, God blesses us. And what we're doing is we're storing up for ourselves treasures in heaven. Listen to me. One day, we're going to walk into heaven. We're going to walk into heaven. And someone's going to come up to you. Someone's going to come up to you and say, hey, remember that fall festival? And you were volunteering even though you were busy. Your life was falling apart. You didn't know how tomorrow was going to come. But you said, I'm going to go volunteer my time. Yeah, I was a little kid there. And you gave me popcorn. And because you were a faithful steward of your time, I'm in heaven. That's going to happen. You know how amazing that's going to be? The little things that we do that we don't even think are part of being a faithful steward has eternal rewards because we're obedient to Jesus. We store up for ourselves treasure in heaven. These are not treasures of gold or jewels, but they're spiritual rewards of our lives that are lived in alignment with God's will. See, one of the best eternal rewards, like I said, I love that we had 600 people out here. It was fun. Just people walking all over the place. You know, I was talking to everybody. I was having a blast. But the number that I care the most about is 5 people. 5 people. That's an eternal reward. Because when we get to heaven, we're going to see people we didn't even know we had an impact on their life. And they're going to run up to us and say, thank you for giving of yourself. And we're like, well, I just was helping out. No, you weren't. You were laying up for yourself treasures in heaven. Every Wednesday night when the Royal Ranger commanders show up and they walk down there, no matter how busy their day was, how long their day was, how tired they are, they'd rather just go home and take a nap because they're just tired. And they come in here and they faithfully serve and they teach these little kids and they give of their time to these boys. They're getting eternal rewards for the work they're doing. They may never see anything on earth. Commander Tom doesn't even know what an impact he had on my life. But one day in heaven, I'm going to tell him. I'm going to tell him that at a moment in my life when my world, as a 12-year-old boy, was falling apart, he was faithful because he showed up. He showed up. We see lives transformed. We get to see the spreading of the good news of Jesus. That's eternal rewards that we get. We get to experience the joy. I don't know about you, but I love baptism. I sit over there and cry. Like, oh my goodness, man, there's these kids. There's these kids that are making decisions, and they're standing in front of all these adults saying, I'm going to live for Jesus. You going to help me? Yes, we're going to help you. The joy of hearing and seeing people's lives change. You know why I pastor? You know why I do what I do? The thing I love the most about it is when I see people's lives transformed. And when I see them grow in their faith and mature on the Lord. There's nothing like that. It's worth all the other stuff. It's worth all the other stress, everything else that we have to do. I don't care about that. When I see someone make a decision to follow Jesus and they begin to grow in their faith, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. One day, the eternal reward that you will have for being a faithful steward is Jesus. Matthew 25:23 says this. Jesus is going to say to you, well done, good and faithful servant. Well done. One day, listen, this earthly tent that we live in, right? The moment we're born, we come out of the womb, we start dying. The process of dying starts. Isn't that wonderful to know? We're born to die. It's like we know the cells start dying, all this stuff happens. In the womb, we're great. Everything's fine. We come out, boom, process of death starts. And it's going to wear out. Some people that we know and love, their tents wore out sooner than it should have. And some of us live longer than we thought we would. But at some time, this bag of bones, right? This bag of bones is going to fall apart and be done. And when that happens, when my spirit goes, Jesus himself is going to be there saying, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful in the little things, but I will give you greater things. God has entrusted us with stewarding what he's given us. We can't focus on ourselves. When we do that, we risk losing the true riches that God desires us. We used to say, the scripture, people say it wrong, it says, money's the root of evil. No. In the Greek, it's this: the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. You all know that. Money is the thing that gets us the most, right? It's why when preachers don't want to talk about money, because it gets everybody's there, the hair stands on the back of their head, like, oh, he's going to talk about. He just wants a bigger car, and I don't. That's not it at all. No. I want you to give your money because I want to see God move in your life, and I want to see us be funnels to do what we did Friday night, where people come to know Jesus. The riches that we get, that are eternal, that we get here, include a deeper relationship with Jesus. I don't know about you, but that's all I want. I want to go deep with Jesus. The older I get, the more I realize, man, I wish I'd have wished that earlier instead of other things. I want to go deep with him. I want to know him. We also get the riches we get here that are eternal are greater responsibility in his kingdom. And the eternal rewards that await are those who are faithful. So here's the question. I want you to stand this morning, and we're gonna end. God is so good. If you can play God is so good. Okay, we're going to sing that again as our benediction today. But here's the thing. The question we ask, are we being faithful stewards of what's got your time, your talent? Listen, some of you have more talent than others. And that's okay. We celebrate any talent that you have, right? I am learning to play guitar. And one of these Sundays, I'm going to bring my guitar, I'm going to plug it in, my dad's guitar actually, and I'm going to play for you. Not now. I'm going to play for you. I've been practicing. Josh thinks I'm ready. I don't know about it. But some of us, if I put a guitar in your hand, you'd be like, I don't even know. That's a guitar. Okay. And then some, like Jonathan or Josh, you just kind of go, ugh. They do this, and I'm like, sounds great, whatever. And so, but it doesn't matter if you have a lot of talent or little talent. It's for him. Some of you are blessed wealth. Some of you are business owners. You're creating a lot of wealth. You're creating a lot of jobs. That's great. That's God's idea that he gave you anyways. And some of us, we work and we have money that way. It doesn't matter whether you have a lot or little. It's what we do with what we have. It's all God's anyways. Right? And some of us have a lot more time than others because of work or things like that. So some of us so what are we doing with our time? What are we doing with our talent? And what are we doing with our treasure? Are we using it for our benefit, or are we using it for his kingdom? See, following Jesus, he calls us to a higher standard of trust, a higher standard of generosity, and a higher standard of faithfulness. So let us invest in the things that are eternal. And remember these words as we pray that we're going to sing this, God is so good, and then we're going to pray. But like Paul said at the end of 1 Timothy, let us take hold of the life that is truly life. Your life doesn't begin until you know Jesus. And then when we're faithful stewards, that's when we begin to live the life that's truly life. walking faithfully in Him and stewarding the things He's given us. So let us, that be our prayer today.